The first comment I would like to make is that the budget started by, if you look at the economic survey vis-a-vis the budget, India is emerging as a shining star in terms of growth. So US economy is on the path of going down, and we have already seen that the federal rate interest rate is already up over there. So the entire US economy is facing inflation, very high inflation, and the contagion effect of slowdown in the US economy can be seen in the entire Europe. Europe is in big trouble. Ukraine war, post-pandemic receding and setting the economy right. So if you look at the entire globe, how they are playing out, China is in big trouble as far as the manufacturing is concerned. They're losing out on the market. But if you look at India, India is definitely a shining star, because anywhere between 6 to 7% growth rate, and it has projected 7% growth rate next year, and 6.5% growth rate that has been achieved, is a good sign for India, and it's actually showing its resilience. And there are many pillars on which you can, give the credibility to the government, or maybe the performance of the economy, that India has actually withstood the test of all these kind of slowdown that is happening. So we should be very happy that we are proud citizen of India, that we are living in a country where the problems, the economy is not actually showing that kind of slowdown. Rather, it is showing a greater resilience in comparison to the rest of the world. But of course, when the rest of the world is down, it is going to affect the domestic economy in one way or the other. And one sector that has been affected quite a lot is the external sector. So if you look at the current account balance, or the cost of selling goods outside, that is export, it has actually increased. And of course, this is the sector which has been hit. But the rest of the sectors like agriculture, industry, manufacturing is all on the expansion path. So probably this problem will also be sorted out, and very soon India is going to bounce back with a very high growth rate. I'm not sure about the 10%, but 3.5 trillion economy is already achieved. So 10 trillion economy or 7 trillion economy may be a reality for India. So I'm not putting my egg in all the baskets, but I'm very hopeful about it. So that is the first point. Second is, this budget actually represents the policy continuity rather than a standalone budget. So there has been a tradition of the budget where the budget is an accounting exercise, annual accounting exercise, and it talks about giving some kind of concessions here, some kind of concessions there, and it doesn't actually become a part of the policy. Probably the impact of the Niti Aayog over a time period has gone down. The Planning Commission is not as vital and critical as it used to be earlier. So Planning Commission used to be the place from where the economic policy will emerge, and it will be implemented everywhere in the country. So that's usually the scenario. But now we do not talk about Planning Commission as a policy making body in that sense of the term. So budget in fact has changed quite a lot, and it is becoming a policy document rather than an accounting exercise. So it is very clear. But if you look at last 3 years budget, look at the priorities that the governments have set. It's actually a policy document in the sense that it has actually maintained that continuity in the policy itself, and the direction in which it is moving is very clear. So when the budget starts and talking about the India at 100, it's not only talking about the Amrit Kaal that we have already entered, but it also has a vision of India at 100. So keeping that milestone in mind, what kind of investment required, what kind of infrastructure required, what kind of AI, it talks about AI, it talks about artificial intelligence here, there, lots of things. Green, you can see, is a big priority. So it's a policy continuity and more of a policy document and direction to the future in which India. And if you look at whether this direction is right or wrong, I'll say it's 100% right, because this is the right thing to do in the present context. In the present context, the policy and the government is not talking about, let's say, green initiative. It's doing some kind of disservice. If it is not talking about digital, it's doing some kind of disservice. It's not talking about artificial intelligence, doing some kind of disservice actually. And we have not seen many government talking about these areas. Rather, only in the last couple of years that the government has started talking about these areas. So I think this is the right priorities, and India is heading towards India at 100. That's the second point I would. Third point I would like to make is that the priorities that it has set is also wonderful and good. So first is infrastructure, second is green initiative, ease of living, it talks about inclusive growth. So I mean, all we criticize the growth is for the fact that growth actually excludes some sections of the society. The growth is very high, is contributed by few sections of the society, not all sections. Because when you spread growth thinly over wider geographical area, then what happens is the growth rate actually slows down. And that exactly happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s. If you see all the policies, that we have never crossed the 3.5% growth rate for India. So it was, Raj Krishna termed it as Hindu growth rate. Not to say that the growth rate has been contributed only by Hindu, but what he meant was that, Hindu society is not changing much, and it's, always progressing on the beaten track. And it seems like that the economy is also going on the beaten track. So he created that kind of simile, and it becomes a very big talk in the economic circle and all. So those days are already over. So we are not talking about a situation where 3.5% growth for the economy, slow employment growth, aspirations of the youth. We are not talking about that. Employment for the educated, used to be a big problem. But nowadays, you see, the equation between labor and capital has actually changed, and changed big time. So earlier in 60s, 70s, 80s, if you look at all around the globe, including India, the labor used to run after the capital. That means, if you are about to, offer yourself in the job market, it's your duty to go and search which company you want to join, where you want to join, where you want to spend, and you run after them like anything. So capital, people who have capital, they had least concern about this. It's the labor who used to run after them. But this equation had changed today. I mean, you see, the capital is actually chasing the labor. If you have the right talent, people are talking about how to develop the right talent. If you have the right talent, there are people who are going to come and tell you, would you like to work for me? Can you take this money and invest? This is the kind of scenario. It's a big change. It's a big change which has happened in India. We don't realize that. But it's not about the number on the growth rate and everything. So the right priorities have been set. Fourth point I would like to make, and I'll end up here, is the couple of years budget, as we can see, that is in continuity. Of course, this budget including, it has not talked about any big economic reforms. It talked about big institutional reforms. So there is a fundamental difference between economic reform and the institutional reform, right? So when a country undertakes the institutional reforms, it actually increases the scope for the youth, for the people, and it actually pushes up the growth rate. And when the country takes up the big economic reform, it's actually bring about a structural change in the economy. So this budget is not talking about bringing about a structural change in the economy. It's talking about removing, let's say, 39,000 regulations for the industries, having scrapped. Well, that's institutional reform. 2,400 clauses to decriminalize, which actually used to criminalize the industry when they operate, has been totally, taken off the shelf. So this is called, institutional reform. So institutional reform backed up by a strong infrastructure, rail, road, air. You talk about any water, any infrastructure. There is a big emphasis on infrastructure, and there is a lot of money being spent on infrastructure. It's almost touching, effective investment in infrastructure is almost touching 4.7% of the GDP. When I say effective infrastructure, this means almost like more than 10 lakh crores directly by the central government, and then there is a lot of leeway given to the state government. You can take money from the central government. The state government can take money from the central government, and without any interest for next 50 years. I mean, this is also the way to push investment in the state. The state government cannot come up and say, oh, it's your job to invest in road. It's not our job. Central government has also given that rope to the state government. So don't say that, go and invest. Money is there, right? So you don't say that, we don't have money, we can't do it. So, that also channel has been taken care of. So I think this is a wonderful, very well thought of, and this is a way to take India forward and position it in the global global map. So this is what the budget is, and I'm sure this kind of budget and the right priority setting, of course, there will be criticism in the sense that, if some section of the society is not benefiting directly from the budget, we'll say, oh, budget is not for me. Of course, budget is not going to be for everybody, but of course, it's a national budget. It's going to affect everybody in one way or the other, but maybe you can talk about the direct benefit is not coming to somebody is getting the direct benefit, is fine, but middle class has been taken care of, no doubt, but it may be because of the fact, because the government is in a tight spot. If you look at the budget deficit is 6.5% of GDP, and of course the government is saying that we'll bring it to about 5.9%, in the next year. But I don't think it's going to happen but I'm not saying that 6.5% budget deficit is also fiscal deficit is also a matter of large concern. Because in a situation like this, where post-pandemic era is taken care of such a efficient manner, helping out on pandemics to the rest of the world by a poor country like India is a big job that India is doing. So look at all the expenses that the government had to bear in the last couple of years because of the pandemic and things like that. 6.5% GDP fiscal deficit is not a big deal. I was expecting that it might go up to 10%, 7, 8%, 10%, and it's fine, as long it's not about the fiscal deficit per se. It's about what is delivering to the people of the country, right? So I mean, the job of the government is to spend more in comparison to what they earn. Because it's not like a private finance where I have to spend less than what I earn. So the public finance is different from the private finance. So it is expected of the government that they will spend more than their income. But how they actually bring the money and invest in the right priorities is the thing. So I think in that way the government has done the right job. खास करके अगर आप देखेंगे तो मेडिकल एजुकेशंस को ज़्यादा प्रमोट किया जा रहा है इस बजट में. जैसे नर्सिंग कॉलेजेस है, मेडिकल रिसर्च के ऊपर काफ़ी पैसे लगाए गए हैं, फार्मा इनोवेशंस पर पैसे लगाए गए हैं, टीचर्स ट्रेनिंग के अंदर बेसिकली पेडागोजिकल ट्रेनिंग की बात की गई है, विच इज़ वेरी यूनिक बिकॉज अब तक कोई भी टीचर्स ट्रेनिंग में पेडागोजी की बात नहीं करता था. अब ये पेडागोजी की बात कर रहे हैं क्योंकि उनको लग रहा है कि लर्निंग आउटकम्स जो है वो ठीक से अचीव नहीं हो रहा है, तो पेडागोजी कहीं ना कहीं गड़बड़ हो रही है. उसके बाद अगर आप ओवरऑल पूछोगे तो अबाउट 3% जीडीपी का टोटल एजुकेशन पर खर्च हो रहा है, हायर एजुकेशन और प्राइमरी एजुकेशन सब मिला करके, which is not very high. I'll say it should go up to at least 6%. तो ये गवर्नमेंट का टारगेट होना चाहिए कि आने वाले टाइम में कुछ ज़्यादा खर्च करें एजुकेशन के ऊपर. लेकिन जो प्रायोरिटीज़ है वो बिल्कुल सही है. जैसे आप देखेंगे अमृत पीढ़ी की बात की गई. सो नो गवर्नमेंट हैज़ रिकॉग्नाइज्ड द यूथ एज अमृत पीढ़ी, और उसके लिए डिफरेंट प्लान्स वगैरह की बात कर रहे हैं. पीएम कौशल विकास 4.0 का मतलब ये है कि इट इज़ अलाइनिंग विद द इंडस्ट्रियल ट्रेंड, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, उसके अंदर स्टार्टअप्स, blockchain, and all the modern digital facilities that you can think of. Even आपके GPT चैट वगैरह ये सब भी पर भी इन्वेस्टमेंट वगैरह हो सकता है. और स्किल इंडिया डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म बनाई गई है. तो द राइट प्रायोरिटीज आर राइट, but I agree with the fact that there should be more allocation to education. But at the moment probably there are some constraint. They are not able to spend that much of money here because it's always a choice for the finance minister or the government. If they want to spend here, they will have to cut down somewhere else. So वो थोड़ा बैलेंसिंग एक्ट करनी पड़ती है. तो बजट इज़ मोर और लेस ए बैलेंसिंग एक्ट. सो अगर ये लॉपसाइडेड बजट बनाएंगे तो फिर आप क्रिटिसिज्म आएगा कि गवर्नमेंट ने इतने सारे सेक्टर्स को छोड़ दिए, सारे पैसे इधर लगा दिए. तो इट हैज़ टू डू सम बैलेंसिंग एक्ट.
I want to ask, since the inflation rate for the first quarter year is projected around 4.72%, what about the common loan interest rate? It is increasing day by day for the students as education loan is increasing, like home interest rate is increasing day by day. What about that?
Interest rate, for that matter, they are all positive relationships. So as the inflation goes up, the interest rate has to go up because there has always to be a positive rate of interest in the economy for investment purposes. If there is no positive rate of interest offered by the bank, then what will happen? You will not deposit money in the bank, you will not invest money. So all kind of problems will arise. So interest rate has to catch up with the inflation. So the clue to low rate of interest lies in the inflation. So as long as the inflation is high, you cannot expect a low rate of interest. So that is one part of the economics. Second is, when the interest rate goes down, does it also gets translated equally into interest rate? When the inflation goes down, does it equally translated into interest rate? It doesn't. So that is the problem in the economy. So there was a talk sometime back when the RBI asked the banking system, why are you actually calculating the interest rate based on the total cost of capital? Because they had this practice of calculating the interest rate on total. The bank will say, oh, our total cost of capital is this much, so we cannot actually charge less than this. It has to be more than that. Then the RBI said, don't calculate the interest rate on the basis of total cost of capital. Why are you not calculating based on the marginal cost of capital? Because it is the additional procurement of capital cost that should be taken into account when you are actually measuring the interest rate, only you are charging the interest rate, not the historical account of cost for borrowing the capital by the bank, right? So these are the controversies that is there, but lot of things have been streamlined. So these days, if you find, you will find that if you are a borrower, you will quickly realize that as soon as the RBI reduces the repo rate or increases the repo rate, it gets reflected quickly in the interest rate. So you get immediately the notification that your rate has increased or rate, and the interest rate is now linked to the repo rate. So there is a benchmarking that has been done. So this problem has been sorted out quite a lot, but it is still the LIBOR which actually is a problem in the economy. The LIBOR rate. The LIBOR rate is the interbanking interest rate. So if one banking is doing the business with the other bank, then what is the rate of interest at which? Is it the same rate of interest or is it a different rate of interest? So we still have a different rate of interest operating over here, right? So there are a lot of, so you have to understand the fundamentals of how inflation and interest rate actually play out and how it is playing out in our country. That will solve lots of your queries, as you are saying. But of course, it is a fact that if if the inflation is going down, it should actually reflect into the lowering of the interest rate, which is not happening as much as it should be.
Average retail inflation rate has been projected at 4.7% for January to March, but still the RBI has increased the repo rate today by 25 basis points. So obviously it is a contractionary measure, but in the budget the government talked a lot about growth too, and increasing the disposable income of the public. So why all these measures are very paradoxical to each other?
Actually, you have to understand there are many trade-offs. So you cannot achieve best of the both of the worlds. That's how economics actually work, and that's the reason why we need policymakers. They make a choice between which is more important at this time, right? Say for example, inflation and repo rate, they actually will go in a different direction, right? So growth, let's say, growth is the need of the hour. So in order to push up the growth, you have to push up the demand in the economy. In order to push up the demand in the economy, you have to leave liquidity in the hands of people. So the government is taking a lot of measure where, including the tax measures, so that the middle class, which is the main spender in the economy, they are left with some more liquidity in their hands so that the growth actually pushed up. Now when the growth actually pushed up, it actually is going to push up the inflation because supply chain is not that smooth, right? So it has a lag. So when there is a lag in the supply chain, so there is a reform that is happening in supply chain as well. So now we are talking about just in time, right, supply chain, something of that sort. So there is a lot of reform that is happening over there also. But you have to understand that goods and services will have a lag in the market, and demand does not have that kind of lag. The moment you have money, you spend. But when you spend, there is a demand created, and in order the goods and services will come in the market will take some time. So inflation will go up. So there is a choice between inflation and, so it's kind of choice between devil and the deep sea. So if you are not caught by the devil, you will be caught by the deep sea. So that is the choice. So you have to see what is important at this time. So if suppose growth is important at this time, then the government will actually do a lot of other measures. Now balancing measure is done by the autonomous agency like RBI, because RBI could see that inflation can be a problem, and when inflation is there, even a slight increase in the retail inflation, as you are saying, CPI, is going to hit the poor. So the interest of the poor has to be protected, and therefore the CPI has to be under control. So if you look at the pattern of WPI and the CPI in the country, you will realize that there was a big divergence in this WPI and the CPI that happened from a very, very long time. Now, from last couple of months, like 6 months down the line, the convergence of WPI and CPI is happening in the economy, right? So wholesale index and this retail index are going to come together. So it will take some time for you to understand that, okay, fine, it's going to realize, finally it is happening in the economy, but at this time it looks like a paradox, right? So, I mean, you have to understand the fundamentals behind it.
Sir, another extension to that, people are left to go to cope up with that demand. The firms will need more funds to expand and produce more, but they won't be able to because the repo rate is high. So is there any chance that the disposable income of the middle class can go in the unproductive expenses too? Unproductive expenditure, which
very good insight. Very good insight. What's your name?
Lakshya.
Lakshya. Lakshya, I would like to have a separate meeting with you because you look like it's not on the lighter side. I'm saying seriously because I want to coach him. I want to guide him because his insight is really very good. So he should develop that further. I appreciate that. Very good. Good observation. Very good observation. Strong observation. So I agree with you.
मैं सर उसमें एक चीज़ ऐड करना चाहूँगा। जैसे अभी इन्फ्लेशन, मेरे हिसाब से जो इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ रही है ना सर, उसका अदर फैक्टर्स भी हो सकते हैं, जैसे रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर और जो डिसरप्शन जो लॉजिस्टिक्स में आ रहा है, जैसे रशिया से हम बहुत सारा इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, तो उसमें जो महंगाई आ रही है, तो मेरे हिसाब से गवर्नमेंट की वजह से या पब्लिक डिमांड की वजह से नहीं है, बेसिकली वहाँ से ही महंगा आ रहा है, गवर्नमेंट डिमांड नहीं कर रही, पब्लिक डिमांड नहीं कर रही, तो शायद इसमें ये फैक्टर हो सकता है। और सर मेरा जो बजट के रिगार्डिंग था कि जैसे हमारा जो इसरो का बजट 8% कम कर दिया है गवर्नमेंट ने। सो एक तो ये फैक्टर था, दूसरा फैक्टर जो इंडियन आर्मी का 13% बजट बढ़ाया है, जिसके अंदर मोस्टली हमारा साथ सैलरीज में और पेंशन्स में जा रहा है, जिसमें कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर बिल्कुल नहीं है। तो सर मेरा इसमें रिगार्डिंग था कि गवर्नमेंट को क्या करना चाहिए, और एक और चीज़ जिसमें गवर्नमेंट जो एलोकेट करती है अलग अलग नेबरिंग कंट्रीज को कितना अमाउंट देना है, तो उसमें एक अफगानिस्तान का भी 200 मिलियन का था, जो अभी केजरीवाल ने भी बोला था कि क्यों दे रहे हो। सर मेरे को इस बारे में इंसाइट चाहिए।
Capex expenditure is very important. The most important step that the government is taking is hiking up the Capex, the capital expenditure. Because when the Capex goes up, it also has its ripple effect. The ripple effect is in terms of employment generation, right? It's a real investment. Capex is a real investment. It's not a nominal investment. And therefore, any capex investment is going to create employment in the economy. So, that's the right priority. And second, it also pushes the economy in the right direction. It actually helps manufacturing because industry loves infrastructure. So anything that you talk about industry, at the end of the day, the industry actually requires infrastructure. Because if the infrastructure is there, the industry will flourish. So, these are all related things. Afghanistan, of course, is a geopolitics. So you have to understand from the geopolitics point of view. So China is going down, and there was a possibility that China will enter Afghanistan. Afghanistan is your neighbor, right? Whatever happens in Afghanistan is going to affect us. It's going to affect directly the bordering state like J&K. J&K is a hot issue at the time, you can see. And with the G20 presidency being given to India, now India is going to utilize this platform in a big way to tell the whole world that J&K is an integral part of India and there is nothing doing about it. So they are going to do that. And then the support of the Afghanistan is going to be critical, right, in this juncture. And if you have seen the recent move by the government, that one of the highest aid to Turkey has been sent by India. And you are saying, you must be saying the kind of trending talks that is going on in Turkey. People are citing the examples that a friend in need is a friend indeed. That's what people have said. And even the Turkish president, who has been a vehement critic of India, right, is one of the vehement critic of India. And he wanted that the J&K issue is not solved and is always remain hot and it should go to Pakistan and things like that. So he's a friend of Pakistan. We all know that. So he himself has actually made this a statement that India is a great country, and we will never, anyone who is helping Turkey at this hour will never in our lifetime forget their help. So why India is doing that? Because there is geopolitics. and you have to actually take care of that. So India has to position itself in such terms that on the one hand it increases the military power, because it has to increase the military power because there is a formidable problem at the border, we all know that. And on the other, will also play their game in such a way that even the worst of the enemies will think twice before doing something against India. You understand? That weakens the Chinese position. So if Turkey is speaking in favor of India, if Afghanistan is speaking, because Afghanistan was a probable area where the Chinese presence would have been very, very hard, very, very formidable. If you don't do anything, the Chinese will enter. So, but these sentiments are going to work in favor of India. And that's why weakening the enemy's sentiment is as good as strengthening your power against the enemy. You understand that? So that is the geopolitics that India is playing.
डॉक्टर साहब बहुत बढ़िया आपने एक्सप्लेन किया, पर दो चीज़ बताना चाहूँगा। जब सेंटर बजट बनाता है तो पूरे वर्ल्ड को साथ लेके चलता है वो, और एक स्टेट का चीफ मिनिस्टर खाली अपने स्टेट के बारे में सोचता है, वो भी अपने पॉलिटिकल माइंड तक ही सोचता है। जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने बताया, तो हिंदी में तो वसुधैव कुटुंबकम जो हमारे देश की परंपरा रही है। अगर आपके घर का पड़ोसी परेशान है तो ये मान के चल लीजिए कि रात को आप चैन से नहीं सो सकते, कोई दूसरा दुश्मन उसको सपोर्ट करेगा फिर। तो चाहे वो अफगानिस्तान हो, भूटान हो, नेपाल हो, बांग्लादेश, श्रीलंका, कोई भी हो, ये सारे हमारी देश हैं। कभी अखंड भारत का साथ है ये लोग। तो हम लोग अगर इनकी मदद कर रहे हैं तो इन पर एहसान नहीं कर रहे हैं हम लोग। हमारी ये कि नीड ऑफ द आवर है, आज वक्त की जरूरत है ये। और बाकी डिटेल तो डॉक्टर साहब बहुत बेहतरीन बता दें, G20 से लेकर सारा वो फैक्ट है ये। तो आप ये मत देखिए किसी सीएम ने, हर सीएम बोला मुझे कुछ नहीं दिया, और मैं कह रहा हूँ भाई दिया जो उसको तो अलग से काम में ले लो, जो दिया है उसका प्रॉपर एग्जीक्यूशन तो कर लो। आप इंडियन स्टेट गवर्नमेंट से पूछोगे ना, 50% बजट इनका लैप्स हो जाएगा 31 मार्च को, इन्होंने खर्चे नहीं किए होंगे। आप दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट के उठा देखिए बजट, लास्ट गवर्नमेंट ने जो दिया होगा ना, इनने पैसा बांटा नहीं होगा। पंजाब फ्री बांट रहा, RBI से लोन ले रहा है, कोई सेंस नहीं है ना।
गैलब्रेथ की एक बहुत फेमस किताब है, आप लोग अगर पढ़ना चाहो तो निकालो। हम लोग जब स्टूडेंट थे उस वक्त पढ़ा करते थे इसको, आजकल पता नहीं सब क्लासरूम में पढ़ाई नहीं जाती। गैलब्रेथ की किताब है एफ्लुएंट सोसाइटी। सो अगर आप उसको पढ़ेंगे तो उसमें आपको उसने बताया है कि पॉवर्टी एनीवेयर इज ए थ्रेट टू प्रॉस्पेरिटी एवरीवेयर। यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट?
And when I was going through the analysis of the budget, what caught my attention is the government has taken measures to benefit the middle class and increase the disposable income. But in that matter, they have also their measures are also discouraging the savings that middle class will used to take to have the tax exemptions from benefits from the government. What's your take, sir?
Give you a perspective, you will understand it quickly. In standard textbook, S has to be equal to I. Saving has to be total saving, has to be total investment, because saving is for investment, right? So saving is kind of investment. Investment is equal to total expenditure. So saving is total expenditure. If the total saving is not converted into total expenditure via investment, then there is a problem in the economy, because your multiplier is going to be low and the economy is not going to see high growth rate. Look at in perspective. Ragnar Nurse, long back, he was an economist. He said that the job of the country is to reach a level where it is able to save 5% of its GDP. And that is the clue to development. Later on, Rosenstein Roda, he talked about different stages of economic growth. He said, economy has to take off. And there is a stage called takeoff. The takeoff stage is where the plane is standing, is now accelerating and is taking off. So that is where the growth rate will accelerate. But in order to have takeoff, you need to push, or he called it big push. So big push theory came into being, that economy has to be given big push so that it takes off, like a plane, right? So he said, what is this big push? The big push is about 10% saving for the whole economy. Very quickly we realized that all this measure, which is a saving centric measure, is not allowing the growth rate to be high, practically speaking, right? Why? Because we realized that 1 rupee saved is not equal to 1 rupees earned. You understand that? If you are saving 1 rupee, that means it's equal to 1 rupees earned. We quickly realized that no, these two are two different things. 1 rupee earned is not equal to 1 rupee saved. 1 rupee saved may not actually create that kind of impact in the economy as the 1 rupee earned can actually create. So if 1 rupee earned is to be accelerated in the economy, then it has to be the investment measure to be taken more, right? We cannot just sit down and rely on the fact that economy will be able to translate or convert all its saving into investment and wait for things to come. We cannot do that because the economy is very competitive. So therefore, investment is the direct focus instead of, and what is so sacrosanct about, let's say, 30% saving? At the moment we are doing 32% saving. Most of it is coming from the household saving, right? The corporate saving is not much high, and if you look at the government saving is almost zero, right? The government sector is not saving. PSU is not saving at all. So everything is government. Everything is a household sector. The household sector is the vehicle of development in the economy. So why through saving? It should be directly coming to the market so that it benefits the market more. More jobs are created, right? So there is nothing sacrosanct. The whole milieu of situation has changed. We are living in a different economy. It's not the economy of the 60s and 70s where our bet has to be all on the saving and then we wait for the government to convert it into investment. So it's not, right? The middle class and the household is directly a partner in the growth of the economy. So it has to be like that. You need money. I mean, if you want to save, there are avenues available. It's your decision. You should take decision. If you are earning more and you want to save more, save it. There are many avenues available. Who is stopping you? But why the government will come forward with a policy and saying that compulsorily you have to save this much? Those days are all over. We are not living in that kind of economy. Okay?